Welcome to Grad School Life by PhD Balance, where we speak to graduate students about the behind-the-scenes day-to-day life in their programs. I'm your host, Courtney Applewhite. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Religious Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, studying death. Please don't forget to like and subscribe on your chosen platform to get notifications about new episodes. Today, I'm joined by the women behind the Instagram account Pursuing PhD. So I'm going to introduce you to each of my four guests today. Bethany Bogan is a rising fourth-year PhD candidate at Emory University in the Molecular and Systems Pharmacology program. Prior to attending Emory University, she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry with a concentration in biochemistry at Georgia Southern University. Bethany's work at Emory is focused on the mechanism by which lipogenesis regulates vascular smooth muscle cell transition to foam cells and explores its role in atherosclerosis in an in vitro model. Ashley Coleman is a rising fourth-year PhD candidate in the Molecular Cancer Biology program at Duke University. Prior to Duke, she received her master's in biology from Fisk University and her bachelor's degree in cellular and molecular biology from Hampton University. Outside of the lab, she loves reading, going to live music events, and traveling. Natalie Monplaisir is a rising fourth-year PhD candidate at the University of Michigan. Prior to attending the University of Michigan, she earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry at Tuskegee University. Her work at the University of Michigan focuses on understanding intracellular signaling pathways mediated by the most common class of FDA-approved drug targets, referred to as G protein-coupled receptors, or GPCRs. Tatiana Buck is a second-year biomedical engineering PhD student at the University of Florida. She studies the brain and whole body radiation models, and in her free time enjoys reading psychological thrillers and binge watching Grey's Anatomy. Welcome everyone to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have a group today. This is the first time for Grad School Life that we've interviewed multiple people at once, but you guys are all united. You are all part of this Pursuing PhD Instagram account. Can one of you or all of you tell me how that got started?
Yes. Okay. So, if I'm being honest, it's one of those like cliche things where it's like, you're kind of just thinking about ways to speak about your experience as a PhD student, specifically a Black woman in STEM. And the idea just came to me one day randomly where I was like, I'm going to make an Instagram page. I'm going to find other women of color in STEM, and we're just going to do this. But when I had the idea, it was in the middle of COVID, and my cohort was virtual. So I didn't know anybody in my cohort. The only person that I knew was actually Bethany. We had gone to undergrad together, friends the entire time, and I knew that Bethany would be somebody that I would love to have co-hosted with me. So I brought the idea to her and asked her if she had any other people that she had in mind to like join our concept. And this is when Ashley and Natalie came on board.
And does anyone else want to add how they decided to come join this sort of group?
Yeah, I think it was really kind of like divine intervention that we all found each other, because even I knew some people that knew Bethany and Natalie through their summer research programs that I met during my master's. I also met Bethany and Natalie at an interview weekend that we all had, ironically, at Emory. So it kind of made sense when Bethany messaged me and said hey, I want to start this page. And for me, I was desperately looking for community. So even in the form of this page, it was just really nice to come to a space where it was safe, and we would help make a place, kind of a resource for Black women interested in pursuing PhD studies.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with everything, especially when Tati reached out to me about doing the page. I'd already started following some PhD pages of other women of color and other Black women who were in the same position as all of us. And so I thought it was a really great idea that she wanted to also start something that could be used as a community, like Ashley said, and just a place for people to come for advice or relatable content, things like that.
And I can add one last thing. I would say the fact that we're all grad students in different departments and different universities. Of course, we're Black women, but all these different experience, we bring it all together just to like bring another resource to other minority students who will follow the page. So I thought that was a great idea when Bethany reached out to me and told me that Tatiana wanted to get something started.
Yeah, I love the network effect, right? So you reached out to each other through these tendrils of, summer events and, previous experiences at universities and sort of things like that. And what an important time to make that kind of page during COVID when people were really lacking community and lacking connection. So I think that timing seems to have been really spot on as well, as far as the need for that kind of page. And so, because you're such a diverse group with a lot of different fields and sort of universities, I'd love to hear a little bit about what each of your days look like. But first, I'd like to start by asking, what is something in your life right now that gives your PhD life balance? Everyone, if you're listening on audio, everybody like looked up and kind of like, that.
That's because being in grad school, it's so hard to find balance. But I would say for me, the fact that I have friends who are in grad school right now, second year, fourth year, third year at different stages. But I also have friends who are not in grad school. I feel like being able to catch up with friends and vent to them and just get some space away from grad school sometimes just helps me. It's just beautiful. It's just the fact that I can vent to them and be myself, be my authentic self. And, that's what gives me balance and keeps me going and keeps me sane in grad school.
I was going to say the exact same thing that Natalie said. I'm the only person in my friend group outside of like the pursuing PhD community that's actively in grad school pursuing a PhD. So I love being able to just like say, I'm tired of thinking about school. I'm tired of thinking about this PhD. And I can just easily pick up the phone and reach out to my friends who are working 9 to 5s or pursuing other endeavors and things that they're passionate in. And I can just zone into what they're doing and zone into our relationship and our commonalities as opposed to just thinking about grad school all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely hanging out with friends and talking to friends is an outlet to like de-stress and find balance during a PhD program. And I also personally lean into like my hobbies as like a escape from grad school. So I also love to read, binge watch Netflix or whatever show I'm watching. That's always like a good escape from when I've had a long day. That's kind of like my balance too.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I love catching a good binge, a good mindless binge, because I feel like we always have to be so focused in our different expertise and work. Also visiting friends that are not in grad school just kind of helps you realize that like there's life outside of what you're doing. Because sometimes the things that happen, whether it's an experiment that went wrong or like you have a really frustrating situation with someone in your lab, it's very easy to feel like that's the only thing that's going on. So kind of like stepping back and either like doing some escapism with Netflix, maybe watching The Circle, or like going to see a friend that lives somewhere else that doesn't have anything to do with my field or won't ask me when I'm going to graduate, or like those types of things. It's just like, can I just come and play with your dog and like forget about everything that's going on? And then I also, I kind of different from everybody is I regularly kind of volunteer with high school students in the area. And I've always found that even when I was in my master's stage, that kind of giving back helped me remember my why on the days where I'm like, man, I could be doing something different right now.
And fun fact for those that weren't here for me and Ashley's private conversation earlier, she's volunteers at my high school, at my alma mater. So small world indeed.
Wow.
Yeah, I think those are all such important points. And I think that the the thing that I love about all of your answers is, yeah, this idea of perspective outside of the PhD. Like, I think that it's so important to step outside of you do get very bubbled sometimes in academia or in scholarship, and you're like, yeah, you lose like your touchstone with like the greater issues in the world. Like, you get so narrowed into like that experiment that you're doing or that book that you're reading or whatever. And so I think that sense of perspective is it's excellent in sort of helping us orient ourselves in the world and in our PhD. And so I want to ask you guys what your average day looks like, but maybe we could do a poll to see who do you think starts their day the earliest among the four of you? Who's the early bird amongst you?
I vote Natalie.
Oh, I was
gonna say Tatiana because I've been
Tatiana.
Oh no, I knew it wasn't Tatiana. That's why I vote Natalie.
I mean, I woke up at 7
We
a.m.
are not morning people.
Natalie.
Oh, wow. I'm not a morning person, but I just wake up at 7 because I just want to come home by 5 and be done with lab because it's summer. I want the afternoon for myself.
Yeah, well, the sun's still out. If it's any consolation, I get up at 6. So,
all right, let's start with Ashley then, the early riser. What does the day look like for you on an average day?
yeah, so on an average day, figuring out a way to make this more interesting than just like Western blots and like gels. But yeah, I get up at 6. I try to do like some like yoga, like some grounding, meditation, journaling, and then I'll eat a quick breakfast, run out the door. I try to get to lab by like 7:30, 8-ish, I am somebody who seems to be a little bit OCD, but I plan my weeks like in advance and just have like a daily checklist I just have to print out so I can kind of be on like auto mode. So like every day I have a checklist that I'll make like on the Sunday of the week prior, and I kind of go through the list like that. I am trying to get better about actually taking a lunch, but I'm somebody who kind of likes to just like get in, get to work, and then go home by like 3 or 4. When I come home by 3 or 4, I'll do like a video call. So if I'm talking to like somebody I'm mentoring, I will typically take those calls. Then I always like to cook dinner. And then I try to be in bed by like 9 to 10. It doesn't always happen, but like that's probably like the sum of most of my days.
Yeah, the ideal day.
Ideal day.
That's the ideal work day anyway. Yeah. So why don't we move to Natalie, since it sounds like you might be the second to get up.
I am not a morning person, disclaimer, but I do get up early because I try to get the afternoon for myself, and I love my naps in the afternoon. So I don't drink coffee, so I make sure I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I do get up at 7 a.m. I do not meditate because it takes me forever to get off bed. I do go to lab. I'm also like Ashley, I do plan my week in advance. I am that person. I love to plan stuff, but I also leave room for flexibility because again, sometimes your experiments don't work. You need to run that gel fast again. I sometimes like to, I get through my experiments and then I like to have my meetings in the afternoon. So if anybody asks me for my availability, it would be 3 p.m. up to 4 or 5. And then I get home, I take my nap. My nap is very serious. My phone is on do not disturb. I will be very mad. I blocked everybody's call because no, that's my nap. I don't drink coffee, so I take that very serious. So usually an hour nap, and then I get up, usually catch up in emails in the afternoon because I like to schedule my emails to be sent the next day. I don't have time throughout the day. Sometimes when I'm in my experiments, again, I'm like, Ashley, come get my experiments done, get out. And then I go to bed by like 11:30, 12. I don't go to bed like Ashley does, but I get my 7 hours in. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely critical. That for some of us anyway, that 7 to 8 hours.
I'm compensating because I don't always get a good nap in. See, you schedule your naps. That's how we're different.
That's right. Your total sleep probably comes in pretty high.
Yes, I take my naps. It's very important. Very, very important.
And then Tatiana, do you want to go? I'm not sure who's later between you and Bethany, who gets up next.
So as a disclaimer, I wake up before the both of them, but that's because I go to bed early. But just because I wake up before them does not mean that I start my academic day at all. I'm very structured in my day just because my kind of lab environment is so sporadic and hectic, and I can't operate like that. Like I went to go get my notebook of like my day from hour to hour. So I typically wake up around like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, but I will start my morning off with some sort of like devotional, um, just something more spiritual for me. I'll listen to music, I'll cook breakfast. I don't exactly head to campus until about 10ish, closer to 11, depending on what I actually have to do. But a lot of my work is more so animal oriented. So on the days that I have surgeries, I'll get to campus earlier. The days I don't, it's more so me just checking on my animals, handling different lab things, making sure the lab stays organized. I will always get lunch. Lunch is always scheduled at 12 o'clock. It does not matter what time I come to campus. If I come to campus at 11:30 a.m., I'm eating lunch at 12. That is my like one non-negotiable, and everybody in my lab has understood that from 12 to 1, don't talk to me about lab things. And then after that, I'll have a bunch of meetings that I'll schedule from 1 to 3. By about 4:30, I'm going home. And then I'll use that time to cook dinner. I'll go to the gym, I'll unwind. And by about 7, anywhere from 7 p.m. to like 9 p.m., I'm getting in the bed. And it's like, I don't know, it works for me. You know, whenever I say this to other PhD students, they're kind of like, what? How does that work for you? But I think it just works because of the type of work that I'm doing in the lab right now. I'm able to adjust my schedule accordingly when I have like random pop-ups, but it's just what's effective for me because it allows for me to like be extremely productive during a set window of time, but then I'm also maximizing the amount of time that I have for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's, and you're really just shifting your schedule, right? So you just give yourself more time in the morning than some people. Some people just get up, head to lab or head to work, and then you're just sort of shifting the time that you spend with like for yourself.
Yeah, something about like, I don't know, a 9 to 5 just seems so ugh to me. I don't know. When I hear 9 to 5, I just shudder with disgust. And so I guess this is like my rebellious way of saying I refuse to do a 9 to 5, especially in a PhD.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to hit your, and it also depends on like when you want to do that kind of work, right? So depending on the type of work you're doing, you might be in a different mood depending on the time of day. Like I have a lot of trouble writing at night, for example. So I have to get up early in order to do my writing because the words don't come for me at night. And so it's that timing thing. And it's, yeah, like you said, based on what you're doing in lab, based on what your priorities are, and all of that. All right, Bethany, where do you fall on this wake sleep cycle here?
Okay, so I want to be like Natalie and Ashley when I grow up because I'm not a morning person, but I start my day with coffee. Like I wake up at like between 7:30 and 8, and my day starts with coffee. But I commute to lab, so I usually get to lab between like 10 and 11. And I usually stay late, which isn't great, but that's usually what happens. And so when I get to lab, first thing I do, I set up my laptop and then I plan out my day. So I plan out my day to day, like of what I need to do in lab. Because usually I get overwhelmed, so I plan out the week. And I feel good checking off things throughout my day. That's how I plan out my day and my experiments. My life revolves around cell culture and Western blot. So that's what majority of my lab work is. So after I set up my laptop and plan out my day, I usually go check on my cells, see how they're doing. Maybe I split them, maybe I plate for an experiment. It depends on the day. And then 9 times out of 10, I'm setting up a gel because, yeah, Western blot. And then once I finish for the day, I usually tidy up the lab a little bit before I leave, make sure everything's turned off. Then I head home. And then when I get home, I usually eat dinner. And then you just try to do something to unwind. Like I read my book or watch a show and then get ready for bed and then read before bed.
Yeah, I think that it's great to normalize the necessary coffee mornings, you know? Like sometimes you got to have that in the mornings just to get going. And so I'd like to do a story time maybe of if you have you had a day recently that just didn't go to plan or didn't look like the ideal day. I got a lot of nodding heads here, so anyone can just jump in with their story time.
I have one. I remember it was last week. I went to lab early because I had a meeting in the afternoon. Usually, again, I plan my meetings at 4, and I try to leave lab early because I like to have my meetings at home because I don't like to disturb people in lab. And I went so early. I think it was 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And I was trying to run a gel and I was looking for my samples, the box that usually has my samples in the freezer. Somebody had moved it. I looked for it for an hour and I was so mad because that's 1 hour of sleep I could have. It's summer. I try to get my sleep in. I take my sleep very seriously. Apparently, somebody had moved it somewhere else and they didn't think about it. And I had to have some other people in the lab help me look for it because I just didn't understand how a box would disappear from a freezer. So that was horrible. So I had to like really shift my day around and I had to multitask. So while I'm running the gel, I'm doing something else just so I can catch up, and then still go home on time. So I hated the fact that my day in the lab started so wrong. I was so frustrated, but it worked out. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least it worked out. I feel like all of my bad days all like have a common factor involved with them. However, one of the more recent ones is I too got into lab super early. I had a plan. I was gonna like do a qPCR play. I was gonna run a gel. I was gonna set up these things and I was gonna go check these mice. Like I had it planned to the T. And I had booked all of the machines for those things like before. And I went to go prep my plate and I went to go load it and somebody had like overridden my like schedule. And I was like, if you know what's involved in setting up like an RT qPCR plate, then you know like the frustration of like pipetting like 96 wells or 360, however many wells. And you're like, well, I guess this isn't happening today. And then I went to go check on my cells and the incubator they were in got contaminated. And it was just like we just went home because one thing about me is like some bad days, I feel like the balls you drop are like rubber and you can bounce back and it's fine. But some days, that day was glass. And I knew that I was not going to be useful the rest of that day. So I went home, I like decompressed. I had some wine ready in the fridge and I was like, it might be a Tuesday, but it's what's required.
I'm glad you actually went home. I'm always an advocate of knowing your limits and knowing when to say, you know what, I'm done, hard stop. And I'm glad people understood in that situation too, because the last thing you want is to have such a frustrating day and then you just like check out, but people still expect for you to just like push through everything and keep working.
The thing is, even if they did, Ashley was not going to be, but yes.
Yeah, I'm like Ashley. One thing about me, if I'm having a bad day, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna go home early because I had a day like similar to Ashley's too, where things were just like going wrong with my experiment. And usually the common denominator for me is gels. Gels are always the reason why I have bad days. So this day, I was loading my gel and I don't know what I was doing, but my pipette missed the well and just went into the middle of the middle of the gel, and it was just like sample all in the middle where the buffer is. And I was like, no. So I tried to like suction out the sample that got in there, and it just wasn't working. When I added more buffer to the gel, it went in the wells again, and I was just like, this isn't gonna go right. So I just redo it, and everything's fine. It runs, it's good. Then I go to transfer, and I spill methanol all over me. Like, I mean, a ton of methanol. Oh, did I? Okay, I thought I heard. But yeah, so there's methanol all over me, and I'm like, this is it. I'm going home. This is too much.
Yeah, you might get
So,
some
yeah.
accusations at that point of,
It's fine though.
of doing something else in lab other than.
For me personally, my situations 90% of the time revolve around outside circumstances and not really like experiments. So this was like 2 weeks ago. And if anybody has been in Florida in the summertime, it's 100+ degrees, it's humid. You go from bright sunny skies to tropical storms and monsoons in like an hour. And I had an imaging session set up at 11 o'clock in the morning. I live 20 minutes from campus, and then it takes me 15 minutes to walk from my parking garage to my research lab. I got all the way to the lab and realized I didn't have my badge to swipe in to the actual lab. I was like, it's fine. Somebody will let me in. No, because my badge also swipes me into the imaging facility. So I had to drive all the way back home to get my badge, drive all the way back, do my imaging session, and then I had to go buy some lab supplies. Well, we needed a lot of lab supplies. So I said, I'm not walking in the heat with all of this stuff. I'm getting the department's cart. I got the department's little like golf cart, loaded everything in, got to the outside of my lab facility. The trunk's not opening. No matter what I'm doing, it's not opening. I stood outside for 20 minutes trying to get it open. In the middle of me driving back to the department's like main office to get some assistance, pouring down rain. I'm driving in this golf cart, no top, just in the middle of monsoons. And I come in soaking wet and I'm like, can I just get some help, please? Why didn't nobody tell me the trunk doesn't work? You can open it, but if you try and open it again, it's not gonna open. So I'm sitting here with like a trunk full of stuff that I need for the lab, soaking wet, no umbrella, no nothing, just standing there in the rain, trying to figure out how to open it. And the department's just like, I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna get in this. Well, someone has to help me. Because if not, I'm gonna leave everything that I bought right here and I'm gonna get in my car and I'm gonna go home. So after about 45 minutes of being in the rain, we were finally able to get it open. And at that point, I went home. I called an undergrad in the lab. I said, look, I need you to do this for me. No questions. I have to go home. I'm literally wet from head to toe. And that's my bad day.
Yeah, that'll do it. All of those things. I mean, I think that you all echo like what Tatiana was saying earlier about, just going home, like just the ability to recognize whenever you're sort of at your limit and then saying, okay, I'm done. I'm done today. Today is it. I'm actually a little envious though, because I'm in humanities and you guys have a few more external circumstances that you can blame. And a lot of time it's just me being like, I don't really want to read this anymore. It's just me looking at the screen being like, I don't even understand words anymore. It's not like a mechanical failure or anything like that. It's like, I can't blame a contaminated sample. I'm just like, yeah, it's just me. It's just me and my sad brain right now. So, but no, I mean, I think that it's totally, but even on those days, anytime that you're sort of out of it, it's much better to get the recharge and come back rather than risk your whole week, right? Like what you guys said, you can come back the next day and it feels a lot better. So I think that resonates. And so as you sort of like on your PhD journeys now, where you are now and like what your PhD looks like, does it align with what you originally like imagined a PhD would look like? Did you have like a vision of what your time would be spent doing? And then how is it similar or different from what you sort of had in your mind when you were applying?
So I felt like I was really prepared for this answer when I was like going into my grad school interviews, because I did a master's before I went to my PhD, and my master's was literally structured to give you what your day in the life of a PhD would be with your master's thesis. Like, it was literally designed to be a PhD bridge program so that you were prepared. So I think I thought that like I was just going to adopt the work schedule that I did during my master's degree. I was going to have the same communities that I had during my master's degree, and we were just going to push out this like 5 to 7 year journey and like be super prepared for it. But I think that like, and we try our best, like even with pages like ours and other people, to like lead by being an example. But there are so many things in the PhD journey that like, no matter how much you read or how much you listen to somebody, like you can't really get prepared for that. And I think some people, even when they talk with me, they're like, oh, well, you don't struggle because you did a master's degree. And I'm like, I've definitely had some difficulties in my PhD, even with like the experiences that I've had before. So I think sometimes we're always looking for places to place blame, but I think there are just so many things that are just inherently stochastic about the PhD journey. Specifics for me, I think I was always very used to having community in-house that I could always go to and like grab lunch with if like everything was going like awful. And that's just not my reality right now. And like I've learned how to navigate that like via outsourcing. But I think that I like was so used to being like, oh, you'll always have that space where you'll have somebody. And like there was literally nothing that I could have told myself 4 years ago, 3 years ago, to let myself know that this would have been my reality. So like, I think like, lest we try, I think there's some misalignment with like where I am right now, but I think I also understand that this is like temporary.
I agree with Ashley. This is temporary. I can't wait to be done one day. But I came from an HBCU and I went straight from undergrad to grad school, HBCU to PWI. Oh, big culture shock for me. I was the only Black girl that was accepted in my program at the time, and it was rough. It was very rough. I was shocked by a lot of things. It took me a while to adjust, at least 2 semesters, and then COVID hit, of course. But I had to look out for those communities myself, like Ashley was saying. You know, I had to pinpoint some people in my department that I can talk to and reach out to other people besides my program myself. And then when I got to grad school, there are a lot of things I just became exposed to, which I just thought you go to grad school, you do research, you graduate, and you're done. There is so much more, and you won't know it until you go to grad school and somebody's super transparent with you in the beginning of the interview process. But like Ashley said, this is temporary. I can't wait to be done one day. The struggle is real, but I know it will pay off. That's the only thing that keeps me going. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that keeping the end in mind is pretty critical in grad school, because there will always be challenges. And I think you're both exactly right. Like you can prepare to a certain degree, but then you sort of have to remember, that this is temporary, that you have a goal that you're trying to get to that's bigger than this moment, and keep pushing. And then Bethany and Tatiana, do y'all have any similarities, differences in the way you viewed grad school?
I feel as though going into my PhD journey, I was pretty prepared. I would hear about Bethany's experience and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep this in the back of my head. I have an uncle who's a PhD professor. So when I was going through the application process, he was telling me all these different things about what to look out for, how academia is, just different things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm good. But kind of like what Ashley was saying, you know, people can tell you so much and like you can hear from so many people, but once you're in there, it's a completely different ball game. And so it did kind of still just throw me off. And my first 2 years of being in my PhD program, it's been pretty rough, but one thing that I've learned about myself is that no matter like what issues I do come across or any adversities that I face, I'm always able to navigate them gracefully. And that's something that I pride myself in, the fact that I'm able to just work through all of these situations and work through the realities of what academia is as a whole, and still maintain my character, still maintain like the things that I'm passionate about, and that my end goal has not changed at all, that I still want to pursue a specific field of research, that I still plan on getting my PhD, and that I still plan on being here. So that's my thing.
Yeah, I agree with everything said. I'm not sure if anything can prepare you for academia or like life in a PhD program. You just really have to adjust as the journey goes. But once you're in, you do learn like the ropes, and it gets easier in the sense of just knowing what to expect after a certain while. But looking forward to the end does help. That's what keeps me motivated too.
And I think what I've noticed in all of your answers so far is that you all exhibit a lot of agency in explaining your own, in like taking your own journey and being active agents and making yourself have balance and working towards your end goals and sort of these things. And I think that's something that PhD students sometimes take for granted. Like we are sort of beholden to our PIs and to our advisors and that kind of thing, but we also have a lot of agency in how we organize our time and how we spend our time and how we can find that balance. And so I think that you've all done a really great job in sort of outlining what that means to each of you. And that sort of also helps you get that perspective, because I think there's a lot of research in psychology that shows that having agency, or believing that you are the person that's directing your ship, has a lot of positive impacts for your mental health and things like that. And I think in the PhD process, we can sometimes get lost in the process of academia, or like the bureaucracy, or sort of all these things. So reclaiming that, even on the scale of like your day, right, can be really powerful in that way. So that's awesome. And then, so what do you hope to accomplish with your Pursuing PhD Instagram? What do you see as the next steps with that? What do you see as, how would you like it to grow and flourish?
Sorry, I keep looking back because, like I said a few minutes ago, being in Florida, 1 minute it's like sunshine, and then the next thing you know, it's storming. It's storming outside, and like I keep hearing these loud bursts of thunder, so I'm just like, ooh. But honestly and truly, I think the biggest goal for at least myself personally is just transparency. There's of course a lot of people who talk about their PhD journey, who talk about what it's like to be a PhD student, but you know, with social media, you kind of have to like fluff it just a little bit and make it look pretty and ideal, like it's a box with a little ribbon tied around it. And that's not always the day-to-day life of a PhD student. Like you have your ups and your downs, you have your hard moments where, how all of us have said, where we just stopped what we were doing and we were going home. And so hopefully Pursuing PhD will be able to showcase that, like the realities of being a PhD student, that every day is not perfect. Every day is not where you do your experiments successfully. You're able to, I don't know, publish like 10 papers, just showing the realities of what it's like to be a PhD student and knowing that you're not alone in those realities.
I think just to echo what Tati said, like, I feel like I will be satisfied if there's at least like one like woman of color who decides that from like our perspectives that, okay, doing a PhD, I thought I wanted to, and then I saw their perspectives and I still feel assured that like, this is what I'm called to do. Because I think that it is so easy to lose that like aspiration to want to do it. And I think a lot of people blame it on like, oh, well, you didn't really want to do it anyway. But sometimes it's like, I didn't really know what I wanted at that period of time. And so like, I think by leading with transparency and showing like the human side of PhD, because I think a lot of that is missing even in some of the human geared PhD student content, and just creating that resource that's available to people. I think that that would lead into that ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, Natalie, you mentioned earlier, like the sense of community too. So it's also, you mentioned that you were the only Black woman in your program initially. So having that that community of women of color who can then share their experiences and like demonstrate that, yes, you know, y'all are out there and y'all are there for support and community is really important too, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that, look, yeah, to emphasize the community aspect, because again, it's not a lot of us. And as we are climbing the ladder, we get dispersed and we then become one or two women in the room. So being able to provide that community aspect with the page is something that, yes, I would really be satisfied with.
And Bethany, do you have anything that you'd like to add to?
No, I feel like everyone summarized it like in the best way possible. Like you guys said, everything that I think the page touches on and like that we hope to touch on with the page to just inspire and motivate and just assure people that they're not alone in this journey, because it can get lonely sometimes.
Totally. And particularly in a moment of, you know, we're still in COVID, right? So there's still distance and there's still space between people, and that lack of ability to move as freely about the cabin as we would like, you know. So and just to wrap up, I want to turn back to Bethany first and say, what's next for you? What do you want to move on to? I'm not going to ask for any timelines, just sort of what are your next goals? You don't have to give me any timelines, just what's aspirationally next for you?
You know, I would like to know the answer to that too. No, it's so hard for me to answer that question because I'm like a child still asking myself what I want to be when I grow up. I thought I knew in undergrad, then I started grad school, and now I'm still like trying to figure it out. But I'm thinking that once I finally finish, I'm probably going to look for a job as a staff scientist at a pharmaceutical industry or like government lab, something like that. My ultimate goal is MSL, medical science liaison, but that's a little harder to do right out of grad school. So probably stay in the lab for a little while afterwards, after I graduate, and then hopefully move into MSL as like my career.
Amazing. And, you know, the beauty of the PhD is it is versatile, more versatile than we give it credit for sometimes. There's a lot of different paths you can take.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's why that was like a big thing that motivated me to do the PhD too. It gives you a lot of options.
Who wants to step up next to tell? I know, and there's a lull, y'all, because everyone's sort of like,
It's so hard to read cues virtually.
It is.
I suppose I will go next. First and foremost, I feel like my only forefront goal right now is just staying the course and finishing. Would love to get a paper out in the next year, you know? But I think that like longer term, I feel like my academic journey has just been filled with a bunch of pivots. And like, I feel like through this journey, like with all the techniques and things that I've learned, I really like kind of taken a liking to like bioinformatics and like data analytics. So like, I low key think that could be a move post-grad. But again, the first forefront thing is just graduating.
Yeah, I'm with Ashley.
I started with that too.
Yes, I am just looking forward to that day when I can defend and graduate. But eventually, I mean, right now what I'm thinking about is I've been networking, so I hopefully would like to have a senior scientist position in industry or government. I do not want to be in academia. God, please, I cannot. And then later pivot into either clinical science or regulatory affairs. But eventually, when I'm like in my 40s, late 30s, I would like to have my team, you know, like I strategize and I work with the team and I lead them, but like working for a big pharma. But I don't know what the future holds, but that's what I see now.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, Career-wise, I don't know. One thing that I do struggle with is I can't really commit to things. So instead, what I do is each year in my PhD program, I rule out something I don't want to do. Um, I guess in an ideal scenario, if I could just have my ideal world doing whatever I wanted to do, it would be to just study motor neuron diseases. Not really sure how I would get there, but that's my overall goal.
Yeah, you got to just, put it out there. But I love that strategy actually of eliminating things you don't like, because that's much more concrete, right? Than nailing down like the one thing that you want to do. Like being able to eliminate, definitely don't like that. Definitely don't like that. That's so smart. That's a hot tip for sure.
I think that's something that should be put more in the forefront more, because my friend recently told me that she's further along in the program than me. And she was like, it's easier to rule out what you don't want to do than what you do want to do. And that is so true. Like, you don't want to work in academia. Like, I think all of us don't want to work in academia. But that's important because you're in academia right now. And that's like what everyone wants to push you towards when you're in your PhD. But if you don't want to do that, it'll save you a lot of time. No need to waste time doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah, and it also helps you conserve resources in a way, right? Because, if you don't want to go into academia, maybe you don't push to go to a particular, like a bunch of different journals, because that's not going to serve you in whatever position you want to hold, or you're not going to emphasize too much your teaching record if you aren't interested in going into teaching. So it allows you to redirect your resources where you want to put them. And explore other avenues that might be exciting to you beyond the ones that you've eliminated. So I think that that's actually really, really smart. Okay, so if our listeners want to find you, they can obviously find you at Pursuing PhD on Instagram. And then individually, where can people reach out if they'd like to connect with you? We can start with Ashley. I'll orient us.
Yeah, you're fine. So personally, I do have my own science Instagram, kind of dormant, but it's Ashley Does Sci. And I believe that's also my science Twitter handle, also kind of dormant. But if you want to find me, that will be where to find me on the internet. Oh, and of course, like LinkedIn and stuff, of course, that's just Ashley Coleman. So.
Yeah, great. And we'll link all of these in the show notes so people can have direct access to them. And then Natalie, where can people find you?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is a good place. Also, you just put in my name, you should find me. Instagram and Twitter. Sometimes I do go on social media breaks, but @_STEMinist, STEMINIST Nat. So yeah, you can just put that somewhere and then maybe they can find it. Also Twitter, but LinkedIn is the best, and then Instagram second.
Yeah, we can do Twitter, but it's nobody's first choice, right? It's just rough out there. And then Tatiana, where can people find you?
My @name on both Instagram and TikTok are the same. I've started using TikTok a lot more to kind of like showcase my life both in the lab and what I do outside of the lab to like de-stress. So that's become like a new social media platform for me in terms of that direction. My @name is Tati.Delicia. It is TATY.DELECIA.
Excellent. And Bethany, where can people find you online?
So my Instagram is @_Bethany Joyce. And of course, LinkedIn is just my first and last name, Bethany Bogan. So it's probably the easiest place to find me.
Yeah, and of course, this is the team behind Pursuing PhD on Instagram. So be sure to give them a follow, support the work that they're doing to create community and uplift women in color in STEM. And thank you all so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about the day in your life.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone joining us. This has been Grad School Life by PhD Balance. Episodes of Grad School Life are posted on Thursdays, and Grad Chat episodes are posted Saturdays on wherever you find your podcasts and on our YouTube channel. For more information about grad school life by PhD Balance, you can check out our website, phdbalance.com, or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PhD_balance. You can find me at CAppWhiteX on Twitter and Instagram. If you would like to be a guest on Grad School Life, check out the link tree of all of our social media platforms. We're scheduling people now. And until next time, bye y'all, and take care of yourselves.